So this is the endocrine function of the hypothalamus. So some hormones are made in the hypothalamus, and then those hormones affecting the hormones in the pituitary gland, or some hormones are made in hypothalamus and then they are stored in the pituitary gland. So here we are talking about the posterior pituitary gland. So if there is a change in the plasma osmolarity, that the level of sodium changes and the amount of water is related to that, then the ADH or vasopressin is released. Are made in hypothalamus and they are released and they go and they are stored in the posterior pituitary gland. So they are stored there. So once there is a change in the plasma osmolarity, ADH is secreted, and then in the kidney, water absorption is increased. There is also an increase in absorption of water in the intestine, but that's less important. And here it will affect the concentration of urine, so urine concentration will increase. Oxytocin has different functions, so it is made in hypothalamus, and the two areas, the two nuclei that are responsible, they are supraoptic and paraventricular. Both of them are responsible for that. For the oxytocin, is the paraventricular more important? For the vasopressin, supraoptic is more important. So in women, there's different situation that oxytocin can help. One is during labor, so when the level of estrogen is very high and uterus is very distended because of the fetus, and then those stretch receptors are sending signals, and that will cause release of oxytocin. Oxytocin goes to the posterior pituitary and then it's released, and that will cause contraction of uterus, and then labor will happen. Another function is that after birth, so when the baby starts suckling the breast for feeding, then that sensation goes and activating oxytocin synthesis. So that is made in the hypothalamus, that goes to the pituitary gland, and that's released from pituitary gland, from posterior part of pituitary gland. It goes to the mammary gland, and it will cause contraction of the smooth muscles around the glands, and that will cause lactation, so the milk can calm down. So there's two different situations here. One is prolactin, that makes the cause synthesis of the milk, so it stimulates formation of the milk in the breast glands. But oxytocin is the one that causes lactation, which the milk should calm down. That's two different stages. Also, it's important during sexual activity. So during orgasm, oxytocin is released, and that will cause contraction of uterus and the vagina in female, and it will cause contraction of the vas deferens or ductus deferens and prostate gland in male. So that will cause that will help ejection of the semen from penis. This is for the anterior pituitary, so the hormones that are affecting the anterior pituitary. So there are different parts of the brains that are involved in the function of the anterior pituitary gland. The forebrain, the limbic system, the ventral striatum, brainstem, and spinal cord, all of them are depends on the function. It can be visceral function, it can be emotional response, that it can be growth and development, metabolism. There's different reasons for it. So the different hormones can be released. Some of them are for acute homeostasis. Some of them are for prolonged, long-term, balances of different body functions. Hypothalamus are making regulatory hormones, and these regulatory hormones are called releasing or inhibitory hormones. So if the hormones are made in the pituitary gland, These are called trophic hormones, or they are called stimulating hormones. So it's a little bit, the name is a little bit different. Okay, so corticotropin releasing hormone is made in hypothalamus that will have a positive feedback mechanism on the anterior pituitary, and that will make ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, that will go to the cortex of adrenal gland, and that will cause release of cortisol and cortisone. So then it will, when the level of cortisol goes high, cortisol will cause increase in the glucose level in the blood. It will also breaks down the fat. It will breaks down the proteins in the muscles. So the main function of cortisol is keeping the glucose level high, which is used as a source of energy in the nervous system. So if the level of glucose goes high or cortisol is high enough, then there's a negative feedback. It goes to the anterior pituitary, and also it will go to the hypothalamus and all these other parts of the brain, and everything goes back to normal. So this is a short negative feedback and also long negative feedback. Another one is the thyrotropin releasing hormone that is made in hypothalamus, and that will cause formation of TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, that goes to thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is making thyroid hormone, which is T3, which has 3 iodide, and T4, which has 4 iodide. And that is important for metabolism, increased metabolism, and formation of ATP. It generates heat. Also, it's important for development of the musculoskeletal system and development of brain also. Another hormone is released from thyroid gland that's called calcitonin, and this has nothing to do with this situation. This is a local hormone. If the level of calcium is high, calcitonin is released, so it's not related to TSH. Okay, so another hormone is called gonadotropin releasing hormone that is made in hypothalamus, that will go and affect anterior pituitary gland. And then there's two hormones that are made. The one is called luteinizing hormone. The other one is called follicle stimulating hormone. So these hormones are affecting the gonads. In male, it will cause production of inhibin. It's not written here, inhibin. And testosterone in male, and in female, production of estrogen, progesterone, and inhibin also in female. So testosterone is important for secondary sexual characteristics and also spermatogenesis. Estrogen is important for menstruation and also secondary sexual characteristics, and progesterone is important for maintenance of pregnancy. Inhibin is also important for formation of sperm in male and ovum in female. Another hormone is called gonadotropin, growth hormone releasing hormone, and that will cause formation of growth hormone. Growth hormone is released. That will affect, well, all the stages are not shown here actually. It will increase mitosis in the epithelial tissue and also the connective tissue. Then the growth hormone goes to the liver, and that makes another hormone. It's called somatomedin, and that is the one that will actually affects epiphyseal growth plate, which is located in the ends of the bones, especially the long bones. It's located there, and that will cause increase in height. So as long as that's open, the person grows, and once that is fused, then the person cannot grow anymore. So this is a positive feedback, but there is also a negative feedback here, that growth hormone is released in a pulsatile fashion, not continuously. If it is released continuously, then you become a giant. So here another hormone is released that's called somatostatin, or growth hormone inhibitory hormone, and that will cause inhibits the growth hormone. Also, when the growth hormone is released and somatomedin is made. Somatomedin comes back and inhibits growth hormone and stimulates somatostatin. It's not shown here, but if you want to draw it, somatomedin will inhibit growth hormone and stimulate somatostatin. Prolactin, a releasing hormone, is released from hypothalamus. It goes to anterior pituitary and can cause production of prolactin, and that will affect the mammary gland or the breast, and that will cause production of milk. So once prolactin level is high enough, again negative feedback, it causes inhibition of the prolactin release, or it will cause stimulation of prolactin inhibitory factor, which is similar to dopamine. Dopamine also causes inhibition of prolactin, so that the person will not have prolactin produced continuously. This is it's the blood supply of hypothalamus. I mean the pituitary gland, the connection between the pituitary gland and hypothalamus. So there's two different things in this slide. If you look at it here, these are the blood vessels. So this is called the superior hypophyseal artery, and this is called inferior hypophyseal artery. So the superior one, it goes here and it creates a capillary system here. This is the capillary system. So the plexus that you see, this is the capillary system. And that area is called the pituitary stalk or infundibulum. This is infundibulum that connects pituitary gland with the hypothalamus. So this is one capillary system, and then this is another capillary system. So there's two capillary systems here. And this one is located in the anterior lobe of pituitary gland, and it's surrounding these epithelial tissue, these glands in the anterior pituitary gland. So there is two sets of hormones that are there. Okay, so one is made for the posterior pituitary gland. So this is the paraventricular nucleus, and this is the supraoptic nucleus, and they are the one that contains magnocellular neurons that makes ADH, antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin. So they make these two hormones, and then they transfer it to the end of the axons here. So they are stored at the end of axons here. When there is a stimulus there, like changes in osmolarity or a contraction of the uterus, for example, during labor, they are released from there in the venous system. So this is hypophyseal vein. This is hypophyseal vein. This is hypophyseal vein. So this is a more simple. So made here in the hypothalamus, stored here in the posterior pituitary. But there are other cells, and these are called parvocellular cells that are located in the anterior and the medial part of the hypothalamus, and especially in the suprachiasmatic and supraoptic areas, and also they are mainly around this area. Also, the most important area is the arcuate nucleus that makes these hormones. So these are the regulatory hormones, but you can see it all over in the anterior and medial area. So these hormones are made there, and they come here and they are released in the capillary system in the infundibulum or pituitary stalk. They are released here. From there, these hormones that are coming from the hypothalamus, these inhibitory or releasing hormones, they are coming here and they are going in this area. Now they are affecting these cells. So these are the epithelial cells, these are glands. And now these glands are making other hormones. And those hormones are released through the hypophyseal vein. So in summary, these regulatory hormones are made in the hypothalamus. They are released in the pituitary stalk capillary system. Those hormones comes here affecting hormones in the anterior pituitary gland. So either these new hormones are made or maybe these hormones are inhibited. The visceral function of the hypothalamus, so this is related to autonomic nervous system. And hypothalamus is the central control of autonomic nervous system. So for the sympathetic system, it goes through the posterior nucleus of hypothalamus. It goes through the brainstem, and then it ends up in the lateral horn of spinal cord and gray area, so between T1 and L2. And then this is the preganglionic neuron, and this is the ganglion. These are the closer to the spinal cord. So, and then these are the paravertebral, if you remember it, and these are the ganglionic neurons that goes to the different organs. And for the parasympathetic system, so this is the nucleus is in the anterior area of the hypothalamus, and the parasympathetic system has craniosacral part. So for the cranial part, this is related to cranial nerve 3, 7, 9, and 10. So this is the hypothalamo-bulbar tracts that you can see hypothalamo-bulbar. So they are going to the preganglionic, connecting the preganglionic, and these are then the preganglionic, and then there's the postganglionic, because the preganglionic of the parasympathetic system is long, and the rest of it goes all the way to S2 to S4. So this is supplying areas in the pelvic area, so lower abdomen, and this is the preganglionic long and postganglionic that is short. So in this image, this tract that you see, this is hypothalamus-spinal. This is also hypothalamus-spinal, so don't get confused a little bit, because it shows here this is the hypothalamus-bulbar. Hypothalamus-bulbar is around here, only around here, and this is from here to here all the way down. This is the hypothalamus-spinal. So hypothalamus-spinal has sympathetic and parasympathetic system. It depends. It goes to different areas of a spinal cord. The temperature regulation, one of the important functions of hypothalamus is temperature regulation, because this is complicated and different systems are involved here. If the body temperature is increased, then the anterior hypothalamus that has a parasympathetic activity is activated, and that will cause decreased metabolic activity. It will also cause vasodilation and sweating. So vasodilation is that, if you remember, that the sympathetic system is causing contraction of the smooth muscles of the artery. So if the sympathetic system is not active, then the blood vessels dilate. And sweating is actually part of the sympathetic activity. So here the sympathetic activity actually decreased, but the issue only here is a little bit different, is that the sympathetic system is releasing acetylcholine, and acetylcholine is the one that's affecting sweat glands, not the norepinephrine. So the norepinephrine part of the sympathetic system is decreased, and that's how the metabolism overall decrease. But sweating is one of the ways that the body releases heat. There's also behavioral change that will happen. So hypothalamus is connected to the cortex of the brain, and that's why the person taking extra clothes off and opening the windows or turning on the AC or the fan or something else, or going to shade. So different things can happen, or decreasing activity, you want to rest. So behavioral change will happen also. If the body temperature goes down, the posterior part of hypothalamus, and that is the sympathetic system, become active, and now There is a vasoconstriction, so that makes sense. The shivering of the muscle, so sympathetic system is activating the skeletal muscle and breaking down the glycogen, so the muscle can contract, and that is causing shivering. This does not happen in babies. In babies, lipolysis of brown fat happens, and that's how they keep their body warm. And metabolic rate also increase, so the cardiac activity increase, the blood pressure increase, respiratory rate will increase, and muscle function, lipolysis, everything increase. There's also behavioral change will happen, so the person is putting more clothes, closing the windows, turning on the heater, trying to do more activities, so there's other behavioral change can happen. There's a regulation of the food intake is one of the functions of the hypothalamus. As you can see here, there's two different parts of the hypothalamus. One is increasing food intake and the other one is decreasing food intake. So if the level of the nutrients like glucose and fat is low, then lateral hypothalamus and medial arcuate nucleus is activated, and they are making orexins, and these are the ones that have two different functions. One is increasing feeding, the other one is keeping you awake. Also, ghrelin is important, and the ghrelin from the gastrointestinal system also release that will cause increased feeding activity. And if the level of nutrients are high, the person already eaten. So these are controlled by mainly by the ventromedial hypothalamus, but also the lateral arcuate nucleus has some responsibility there, and corticotropin releasing hormone that will keep the glucose level high. So that is another one that is released, and it is the satiety center, so to make sure that the person does not eat too much. Also, leptin is released from the adipose tissue, that is affecting the satiety center, and if somebody ate already, there's gastric stretch, distension of the stomach will cause signals to be sent to the hypothalamus, but usually it takes around 20 minutes. So if you eat slow, then that way your hypothalamus knows exactly when to stop. But if you eat fast, then by the time that you eat a lot, then hypothalamus become active, and at that time it may be too late. So if you want to keep your weight in balance, that is, you should eat slowly. The regulation of the water is another function of the hypothalamus, and here there is osmoreceptors that are controlling the osmolarity of the blood, and that is located in the anterior region of the hypothalamus and also in the lateral hypothalamus, which is the lateral zone, the parasympathetic area, and these are called the thirst centers. Once the osmolarity goes high, these centers are activated, the ADH is released, and once the ADH is released from the supraoptic and paraventricular, especially supraoptic, then it will cause reabsorption of the water from the kidney and from intestine, and also cause concentration of urine. So there's a decrease in the urine production. And that way the blood pressure goes up, the blood volume goes up, and the thirst will decrease. There's also other mechanism there for the regulation of water and sodium, and that is renin, angiotensin, aldosterone, but that's a different system. It's not related directly to hypothalamus, but during dehydration and that system is activated, or during hypotension, that system is also activated. So it's important for water balance. The circadian rhythm and sleep-wake cycle is another function of the hypothalamus, and the anterior part of the hypothalamus is parasympathetic activity, has parasympathetic activity, so it increases sleepiness, and the posterior part is more related to wakefulness, and that is because it has sympathetic activity. For the sympathetic activity, histamine is important for wakefulness. Also, not written in your textbook, but norepinephrine is another important one that keeps you awake. Serotonin is another neurotransmitter that will make you sleepy. So for the circadian rhythm, an important part of the hypothalamus is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and here is receiving signals from the eyes. So retinohypothalamic pathway is here, and the eyes are processing photons that are coming from the lights. When the level of the signals decrease, and that is the suprachiasmatic nucleus is sensing that, and also this is connected with the pineal gland in the hypothalamus, and then melatonin is released. So then the person will be sleepy, and that will decrease eating. And if the level of melatonin decrease, then the level of the person will be more awake, and also eating is increased. The suprachiasmatic nucleus has effect on the hormones, so the pituitary gland will have effect on the other glands like thyroid glands and adrenal glands. So these are the ones that are important for metabolism. It has effect on the autonomic nervous system, and that is for the function of the visceral organs. So the body temperature changes, the level of hormone also changes during 24 hours period. Autonomic nervous system, especially the sympathetic nervous system, has a direct effect on the immune system, so it's activating immune system. And also thymus is part of the glands, not directly related to the pituitary gland, but part of the gland. So that is releasing the thymosin, so that will cause affecting the T lymphocytes, the part of the immune system. So it's also affecting the blood vessels. So blood vessels is mainly the function of the sympathetic system, but also the hormones are important, because hormones released from adrenal gland can also affect the blood. The constriction of the blood vessels. And it also has some changes in the behavior. So your behavior has an important effect on the circadian rhythm. For example, staying late at night, the circadian rhythm changes, or waking up early, that will changes. Things that you eat also affect the circadian rhythm. So there's a lot of differences there.